Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneur Show. I'm Justin Bizarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there, you can find us on Instagram at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs or at Justin Bizarro. You can also find our community at Gorilla Brave. You can find that on Instagram. You can also find it at gorillabrave.love. So as this podcast comes out, when this one comes out, that website will be up and running. It will get a facelift. It has a whole different membership structure by the time it comes out. So anyone who's seen it before, we've gotten all the feedback from you guys, membership structure, things you want to see, educational series, events, networking, all of that, how to communicate with each other in groups. We've got all the feedback over the last 3 years now, and we've implemented that for you guys. So with that being said, I have Tarik with us from Unity Vibration Kombucha out of Michigan. I'm going to let him say the name because I keep trying to say it in my head and I keep messing it up. So how are you doing today, Tarik?
Hey, Justin, it's nice to talk with you. I'm doing great on this snowy, foggy day.
Ypsilanti. And we're going to do it with the crowd. I can't get it. Ypsilanti. Ypsilanti. I was close.
We call it Ypsi for short. Basically
Ypsi.
a suburb of Ann Arbor.
I love the name. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm a big fan of Michigan, actually, in the Detroit area. And actually, I'm going to say this for everyone. There's an interesting little thing. I look at food entrepreneur pockets. Okay. Some states, guys, some parts of the world and part of the United States actually foster entrepreneurism, particularly in food, better than other places. Detroit is one of them, and the suburbs. Interestingly, I think it's the boom of the car industry, built a lot of infrastructure there. Then we've sort of had the downfall of the economy, looking to other sources, sort of the de-urbanization of Detroit in some ways. And then you have a lot of people that were there supporting those economies that have sort of moved. So Detroit is one of them, just so everyone knows. And you can guess, obviously, New York and Nashville now are also those type of markets. They're just producing food entrepreneurs at fast rates. New York, I think we all know, already has always, but, Detroit has as well. We have one on the show. His name was Peter Elias. He comes out of Detroit as well. Egyptian, actually, there are a lot of Egyptians and Middle Eastern businesses in Detroit as well. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Unity Vibration Kombucha. Let's talk about your story. Let's go all the way back to as a kid, because you have a whole lifestyle you develop. It's not only have you developed a product, but it matches your lifestyle. So I think all of it's important. It's not only are you building a brand, but you're actually living it by your core values. Let's dive into it.
Yeah, sure. I have a wife and business partner, Rachel, who's not on the call, just so it's the whole thing wasn't just me, but I will talk about myself. I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, to a mixed marriage. My mother is from Connecticut and, of Northern European heritage, American, and my father was a Middle Eastern man from Palestine. So he had his grandfather. My grandfather was a businessman in Palestine up until 1948 when they became refugees, and he went to school. My dad did to University of Michigan and became an engineer, and then had a family. So I always grew up with kind of a story of business in my family line. With my grandfather had a textile company, a rice refinery, orchards, grew oranges, grapefruits, and exported them all over Europe. I mean, he was very successful. So we had that. We loved to eat with the Mediterranean mentality. My father cooked all the time. He cooked Arabic meals, different things. He made hummus, he made makluba, he made all kinds of things. And my mother got me kind of into health foods at a young age. So we'd go to the local health food stores and purchase things there. And kind of she had me on a more natural diet in the 70s and 80s. So I kind of had that sensibility from that side as well. And then just growing up, I was musical, had an engineering degree, worked for automotive industry for a while as an engineer, and got into raw foods and really got into health and healing and got passionate about like the raw food diet. So one day I happened to be in San Francisco on Haight Street, and there was the Haight Street Market, I think it was called. They had, and I was a raw foodist at the time. And when you're traveling, you're very limited on what you can eat. So I saw this product that said raw on it, and I'm like, oh, wow. And it was GT Synergy Kombucha Trilogy. And I grabbed it, and just my life has never been the same. That was in 2006 that happened.
Yeah, kombucha. What a transition there. And the funny part is, I'm going to just say this to everyone. One of the things that I will tell everyone is when I was doing a lot of business in Georgia, a lot of farmers and farmhouses, interestingly, have kombucha just sitting there in the houses constantly being made for everyone out on the farm as an alternative to having soda or whatever. It's just been traditional. It was too hot. There wasn't refrigeration, and kombucha could just sit inside. You could just put ice in it here and there and it would stay cold. It's an interesting thing with the whole SCOBY in there and everything. So I've learned a lot about kombucha. I've always been a fan. Probably about the same time, it was something that I grew more accustomed to as I learned more about it. And I know there's a lot of information out there related to raw foods, but I will tell everyone it is an important part of our diet. It is something that has been there for a very long time, and it is something that is good for our gut health. So let's talk about why your journey to health. Was there a sticking point? Is it something that always happened? Why you were raised with the awareness of it, but why stick to it? Why a lot of people are raised with health, but end up not sticking to it. What is it why did it stick for you? Why health? Why the better way of eating?
Good question. I had some ups and downs with my health. Just growing up in the 70s and 80s in America, fast food was prevalent, pizza. So in college, I partied a lot. I ate a lot of unhealthy foods because you're experimenting and kind of breaking out of your parents' mold, although they kind of got into it as well with the fast food just because it was the thing to do. And everyone said it's healthy, it's got all the food groups, especially pizza. That was something people used to tell me, which, was crazy. They're like, this is a perfect health food. It's got grains, it's got meat and cheese and vegetables, it's everything. But so there's a lot of misinformation, and my body is very sensitive. So, and I'm also very much of a truth seeker type personality where I just want to know, the truth and what, and so when I make my mind up, I got pretty unhealthy, gained 70 pounds or whatever. And I'm a bigger guy, but that was still significant, and decided I needed to do something about it. So, I started researching with an open mind. I didn't go to doctors. I just read books and, watched movies and then most importantly, just experimented on my own body where I found raw foods and I tried it, and my body responded extremely quickly, extremely well. It was every health problem I had went away, skin irritations, and everything. I lost weight rapidly. I felt alive. I felt like I'd never felt. I felt like this was the way we're meant to eat on this planet. We weren't. Stoves don't grow, naturally, it's in microwave ovens. It's just food is provided, in its natural raw form. So I got kind of radical about it, and it just really had a transformative effect on my health. But it is a battle.
Let's talk about that. What you make a decision, right? You make a decision. Does it come easily? Exercise. Talk to me about what it's like to now go into this process of discipline and obedience with your body, with your lifestyle, with what I'll say your diet, although you're really changing your whole environment.
Yeah, I mean, it does take a change all around. And the better you feel, the more active you're going to be naturally. Just being healthy, you tune into things that are natural, and you start thinking in different ways, and one discovery leads to another. But yeah, it really, a lot of times suffering pushes you to that point where you hit rock bottom, or it's not rock bottom, but you hit a point where you say, I've got to turn this around. And then you just make your mind up, just daily discipline, which, like being a business owner, it's the same thing every day. You're kind of married to this business, and you just keep it going and do what you need to do every day. So
Let's dive into what a raw food lifestyle actually looks like. You mentioned eating out is difficult. Maybe it's a little bit easier now as we've progressed society wise a little bit. I wouldn't say enough, but a little bit. Talk to me about what do you eat? What does your day look like? What is getting your nutrients, minerals? People think food, they think microwave or heating it up or whatever. Talk to me about your day because I think this anchors your brand big time, your story and in your lifestyle.
yeah, I mean, there are lots of parallels and connections for sure. I also do eat some. I eat some locally sourced meat as well. So I'm not a purist any right now. Currently, my wife and I go to a local food hub in Ann Arbor, which sources regeneratively, grown agriculture, fruits, vegetables, meat, you name it. So we do mix it up a little bit with a little bit of that, but most of my diet is currently a lot of fresh fruit, a lot of salads. I sprout nuts and seeds. So I'll make pates, hummus. I'll just eat them straight. You make different kinds of meals, cookies, whatever. There's a whole actually gourmet world around raw foods, which is crazy. There are restaurants where you can have these. It's like it's becoming its own type of cuisine. But I'm just doing it for health reasons right now. Just trying to feel better, and it does anchor the brand because it was what got me so personally passionate about having a product that was a living product that was raw, that wasn't cutting corners, that where you feel better when you consume it, you feel more alive, that sort of thing.
I love it. I'm gonna anchor here. We're gonna go back into the kombucha lifestyle diet for a second. I want to talk about family background, household. Father is almost living an American dream situation, coming to America, building a life for his family. Your mom's a little bit of a different perspective. You're growing up with a different perspective per se, especially if your mom's into health food in the 70s and 80s where everyone else is just trying to pump as much microwave food into their kids and fast food because their easy lifestyle. And you did mention sort of going that direction, but talk to me about the drive, parents, motivation, mentors, influences in your life that had positive impact, because I think the family dynamic, maybe your father's ambition for a better life, maybe that's why he came to the United States. I'm not positive, but he obviously built something. You're an entrepreneur in the United States chasing your American dream, for lack of a better term. So let's talk about mentors, your family, growing up, stuff like that.
Yeah, he was into construction and he was definitely ambitious. He was a president of several companies and but mostly around civil engineering, construction, and mechanical engineering. My mom also became a doctor, so that's another aspect. She got her DO later in life when she was 53. She raised us kids, and so she always had these health leanings. It was always her dream to be a doctor, and she's still practicing now as a family practitioner in South Texas at 89 years old, which I find incredible. So just I think they were world travelers in a way. They moved from Connecticut to Michigan and then all the way to South Texas, and my dad all the way across the world, and it just broadens your perspective when you're an immigrant and when you move to a totally new place and start over again. So I think that just created, children who they instilled in us, kind of a mentality of open-mindedness and, adaptability and thinking outside the box a little bit too.
Yeah, I love it. How about like mentors, coaches, people who invested in you, maybe in school? I mean, was there anything or a book or athletes or anything that were particularly impactful to you?
I mean, book, I like my wife and I saw the guys that started Honesty, Seth Goldman and Barry Delbuff, Mission in a Bottle. So that was pretty inspiring. I like David Wolf as a raw foodist. He's an interesting person for sure. Yeah, Power Positive Thinking is a great book. I mean, there's so many good business books too. Obviously, you can, read them. And I did a Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business like a mini MBA kind of thing, I guess you could say. It was for entrepreneurs, and we had it was in Detroit, and we did have food entrepreneurs in the group. And what you said is exactly right. It's very farm to table is really becoming a big thing here. So we do have a pretty good system in place for that, and especially around Ann Arbor being a university town and all that.
Yeah, I always think about it. I do think of Ann Arbor being very forward thinking. There's a lot of innovation that comes out of there over the years, even in food as well. Let's sort of jump into this. You're living it as a lifestyle. When do you decide that this is going to be a business? Why? Like, there has to be a thought process here. There has to be a discussion. It's not easy to start a business, let alone a consumer packaged business, let alone in the acid food category, so on and so forth. So let's talk about all that, because there's different loopholes that you jump through as a kombucha versus other consumer packaged goods. I think that's important to note. And I think that you're starting a business maybe in a field that's newer to you. So you're having to do a lot of new things. Let's talk about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. New is definitely right. I mean, I had no business experience before this. Neither did Rachel, my wife and partner. I also, as another side note, I have an MSW, a Master's in Social Work from Michigan. So after my engineering career ended in early 2006, I went to school, and I just wanted to. So that's another part of me, I'd say, and maybe the business too. It's just this desire to put a positive message in the world, to help people and help their lives, and have that more of a social work kind of lean to things. But so in 2006, I met Rachel, and it was very powerful meeting, meant to be. She had two boys, like 6 and 8, and I had a girl who's age 7. So we were a blended family, and we moved to California for about 2 years to Santa Barbara, and we had a son there who's now 16, River. And the idea just sprang from, I got Rachel drinking kombucha. She's also a breast cancer survivor, and before she met me. And so when I met her, her friend who was an herbalist who had been growing kombucha, and at the time I was drinking GTs, I had no idea that I didn't know what kombucha even looked like, with the SCOBY. I like GTs, it's a beverage you buy at Whole Foods. So there was a little SCOBY in her kitchen, which is the SCOBY stands for symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, and kombucha makes a floating pellicle. In Belgian brewing terms, it's called a pellicle. So it's just a little vegetable cellulose mat that floats on the top of the surface with kombucha, and it looks kind of like a mushroom from a different planet. It floats because of the CO2 particles, keep it buoyant. So she had one in her kitchen. It's the pellicle is white, or the SCOBY is white, so it looked like a little piece of bacon, fat or something floating on liquid. She didn't know what it was. Her friend just gave it to her because kombucha has, I'll say, allegedly has anti-cancer properties. So her friend gave it to her, and it was just sitting in her kitchen the whole time I knew her. We didn't make the connection until we brought it with us to California, and then we realized what it was. And that culture actually became part of our initial cultures that we started our business with. But we started brewing it ourselves, and she was pushing that. She's like, let's brew it, because I'd done winemaking in the past, beer making. I'm a brewer by nature as well. So she just asked me to start a bit. She's like, let's start a business. Let's start a kombucha company. I'll never forget the moment when any business owner, they have that moment of inspiration. It was just, my initial feeling was like, this is a crazy idea, because I had no idea how to make a beverage large scale, let alone, like you said, acidified, fermented, on and on. It's complicated living. You're like a zookeeper. You're dealing with a lot of unpredictable microorganisms, but mostly predictable, sometimes unpredictable.
Yeah.
So she just said, let's do it.
Each
And
with a personality of its own, for sure. I'm sure. Each
they
SCOBY.
do.
Yeah. Go on.
But yeah, I thought about it for a second. I'm like, okay. So we started we started conceptualizing Unity Vibration, and we started the company, both of us with also an interest in sound healing. She was a massage therapist and energy worker when I met her. So here's the woo woo part, I'm a musician too. So understand vibration and how it makes you feel and inspires people. And so, but we got into sound bowls, Tibetan bowls, gongs, different frequencies, the effects that they might have on your health. We read Masaru Emoto's book about messages in water and how he did a bunch of fascinating experiments with water and writing words on little canisters of water, infusing them with sound vibrations or songs. I mean, he did very broad-minded studies where he would freeze the water instantly after he did this, and he'd always have a control. And he theorized that the water crystals, because of the shape, they would look at them under a microscope after he put love, let's say the word love on a little can, a little container of water, versus just the plain water without any word. There was a difference, and he noticed correlations with positive words and negative words, and discord music and beautiful music, and it was pretty consistent as far as the more positive the word or beautiful the music, the more beautiful the water crystals, and the same the other way. So it's interesting. I think it's just scraping the surface of trying to understand something that we can't really understand yet. But that was inspirational as well for us with the business. We were fascinated. We thought, well, if we put positive affirmations on all of our tanks, or at the time our jars, and play Tibetan music to them, it's going to theoretically somehow store and change the water crystals. And then when people consume that, it's got to have a good effect on their body. So it was not scientific on our parts. It was more intuitive, but it's part of the company. It's part of what formed this company. So then we got into the more practical side of it, and branding and bottles and flavors and methods, and moved back to Michigan for family reasons. And I had a house here in Michigan, and we had a 300 square foot extra bedroom that we made into the kombucha room, and got a license from the state, the county, government, the federal, to make kombucha in 2009, and started making it. We had about $10,000 that we invested into a few tanks and a little bit of equipment. Yeah. And then we, found a label company. We just started doing it. We thought it was non-alcoholic because the Department of Ag never even mentioned alcohol. And GT Synergy said may contain 0.5% or less, which was actually not true at all. He didn't know, maybe, or maybe he did at the time. So we started selling our kombucha tea to the local farmers markets, and got it into local health food stores, and finally got it into the Whole Foods after about 6-8 months. And then the summer of 2010, we get this call from the federal government, dun, 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 the TTB, and they said, you have to send us samples of your kombucha products so we can test for alcohol, because apparently some samples of GT Synergy in Maine got flagged for being between 2 and 3% alcohol. I mean, who knew? I mean, that's part of probably the reason we liked the beverage so much in the early years, because it was fizzy and you could taste a little bit. It was fermented for sure. I mean, I didn't get a buzz off of it or anything, but it was, relaxing in that way. But so our samples, we were freaking out, and a weird moment I'll never forget. We were driving to Lake Michigan, and we'd gone to the beach with our kids, and we were driving back, and there was massive storms. It was in the summer, coming behind us, this wall of clouds. And I just remember driving in the car with Rachel and the kids in the back, and I saw the clouds in the rearview mirror, and we're kind of just outrunning them, trying to get home. And we get the message on the phone, and we both were like teary. Even we're like, oh my God, it's over. This little dream, this little 2 years, year and a half of working at this passionate business since 2008, we started it, is over. And then we just paused for a minute. I really felt it was over. And And then we start just kind of reconfiguring our
What was
thoughts.
the
And
message exactly that came in that moment that you felt that the doom? I'm just curious. What was
it
it
was a
that?
message from the Trade Tobacco Bureau from someone on the phone, just telling us, you have to season, stop selling it. You can't sell it right now. You have to send samples in. They
Okay.
did it to all the kombucha companies.
Yeah,
Even there were
I think
maybe
it's
20.
I think it's important to note, but go on.
Yeah, I think there were maybe 20 kombucha companies in the world at that time, 20 to 30. We were one of the first. And all of the Whole Foods nationwide pulled kombucha from their shelves, completely stopped selling. GT was the main guy. His stuff is amazing. I'm a big admirer of him as a businessman. I mean, incredible. He created the segment, in RTD, quote unquote, we'll say air quotes, non-alcoholic. We thought it was, and he thought it was. He got it into UNFI, nationwide distribution, in the cold box, got to be cold all the way. It's living. He in the segment of ready to drink, non-alc beverages that was dominated by Snapple, Honesty, by shelf stable products, 100%. They all were, as far as I know. And then GT comes along, and he just completely blew everyone's mind,
Yeah.
which is why I think.
Okay, go
Go ahead.
on. No, I just want to make a note for you and for the audience, just because what happened, I mean, it's very interesting around that time. I mean, here's a couple things that's going on. One, they don't want you, they don't, if you get into the alcohol category by any chance, while on one hand it looks detrimental because there might be alcohol for kids, the other thing is the alcohol distribution system is much different and more thorough, and selling into liquor stores is way more. It's a different game. There's a lot more access. Yeah. And in some ways, yeah, in some ways, no. But at that time, the only company truly shipping beverages cold was Coors. And I just want everyone to look at the era. We're talking about a different era in beverages in the 2000s, 2010s. Like, we think of it differently now because we see a whole cold shelf in the grocery stores. It is not something that existed before for beverages, unless it was a cold soda on the checkout line. And even that's relatively new, guys. That whole creation of the end caps and the selling started in the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s as grocery stores came about, for sure, 50s, even some in there. But when we started getting into cold beverages and the extra sale and the smaller packages for those specific areas, we're talking about 90s into the 2000s. Why am I bringing this up? Because what kombucha did, or the cold beverages or the fresh pressed juices, I'm going to put it all in the same category, need to be refrigerated, is it created a new beverage space. And to the, what I'll call the traditional beverage giants, it was a threat. And so marketing and lobbying and being able to move a new competition off the market, that's either two ways to do it, or actually three. You either go into their market and force them out of business. You either buy them and put them out of business, or or grow them, either one. Or the third, which is you use the government or you use an agency to government regulate them out of business. Okay, so the problem with kombucha is it was confusing because it didn't exactly fit into a category, which made everyone fear it was going to create a new category. No different than the battle we see in grass-fed versus corn-finished world we live in today. So I just wanted to make that note in terms of what we're talking about here. Whenever there's new industries created, there is resistance, or there is those opportunists who are trying to get their benefit from that new industry. But even opportunists are people that say they're going to help you in many ways, are usually hindrances. So anyway, Mike, is back to you. Let's go from there. So the government shuts everyone down across the country. All of a sudden, it looks like kombucha is not going to
Whole
be
Foods
a market.
pulls Whole
Yeah.
Foods pulls everybody off the shelves.
Yeah.
The government says you got to prove it. I might also add coconut water to what you said. That was also a big one that was
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah.
And
Coconut.
reasons why it's threatening. beyond that it's different and that it's new, it's harder. There's backstock, there's product that goes bad when you're a buyer. I mean, in this business, I've gotten to know store buyers very well. I understand their job, like you mentioned, liquor stores, grocery stores, bar owners. You get to know those people and what they have to deal with. And when they have to, send product that's expired back because it's bad, that's more difficult. Keeping something in the cooler, which is very limited. A lot of places don't have big coolers, especially New York City. New York City, there's cooler spaces at a premium. It's tough to even get that shelf space. And then as far as the buyouts, I would also add that a lot of these bigger companies, or when they got bought, they started as a raw living company. They became pasteurized. They became shelf stable. That's big. Coconut waters, that's kombucha, it's happening. Hard kombucha, it's happening. They come back on. They're like, hey, it's shelf stable now, and everybody loves you. All the buyers love you because it's easier for them now. But why buy an unpasteurized product? That's the question for the consumer. Like, why buy 100% grass-fed beef? It's much better for your body. It's living. When you drink it, you feel alive. I used to drink GTs whenever I was starting to get sick, and it would turn the corner. I wouldn't get sick. I felt so much better. Every time I'd feel more enlivened, and you can taste the difference between different brands. But anyway, as far as Rachel and my story, so we were panicked a little, but we started strategizing right away because we work really really well together, especially in the early years. We've raised 4 kids and been together 18 years now, so it's harder now, I'll say, as a married couple, to be in a business together, especially with the ups and downs and the challenges. You get a lot of burnout, and different things, but in those early years, we worked together very well. We figured it out. We sent the samples to the TTB. Our flavors were very fruit juicy because as a raw foodist, I used to juice a lot. And I'm like, I want to have real pineapple juice and real pear juice. We had a mint pear flavor. We had a pineapple ginger flavor. We had all these tons of creative flavors. One with raw cacao and honey and hot peppers and pumpkin. And that was a fall seasonal. And so all of our samples came in over the limit of 0.5%. That's when I started to realize how ridiculously low that limit is, and how, let's be real, it should be 1.2%. It should be much higher because it's not going to damage, it's not going to hurt anybody. It's not going to hurt a child. It's not going to, I'm not a doctor. I won't say it'll hurt a baby, the pregnant woman. I'm not really sure, but it's such 1%, you can't even taste it. Like a ripe apple has 1% alcohol. It's so anyway, all of our products were more. We did contact GT and actually spoke with him. He was a nice guy, and he was panicking. He said, basically like, well, my whole business is on the verge of being done that he built. It was very hard for him. We asked him what should we do, and we thought about it, and all of a sudden these companies that make de-alkalization machines, like for wine and beer, like O'Doul's and non-alc wines, started contacting us, and centrifuge companies. And we're like, what? There's ways to pull the alcohol out with chemistry, with machinery. So Rachel and I just thought about it, and we're like, this beverage is perfect, and people love it, and we love it, and we're just going to keep it as it is. And whatever, we didn't know at the time. We thought most of our customers from the farmers markets and the face-to-face work we'd done, 99% of them were over 21. We just thought, oh, it's such a weird category to begin with. Maybe it's just going to be this weird drink that you have to be 21 to drink. Everyone knows, because it was so great. The old GTs were so great, and so was our stuff. So we went the alcohol route, and the government said, okay, well, we're going to determine if you're a wine or a beer. So they made the determination, because as a quote beer, because it was fermented with malt or a malt alternative. And to not slam, the government workers I spoke with consistently have been the nicest, most helpful people. I just want to say, they weren't a bunch of mean bureaucrats. They were very nice. They cared about, our company, and I'd say statewide too. It's like nobody wants to
Well, and it's not their
ruin.
job to create law. They're just having to follow whatever law is already created and then squeeze you into a box because no one's creating laws for it. They're just taking the
Exactly.
easy route and trying to squeeze you into the categories that exist. But I agree. I understand what you're saying. Go on, please.
Yeah, they were nice people. They tried to help us. Nobody wanted to put a small business out of business. So then things got really weird with us and tough. And GT at the time had said his solution. He's like, I'm going to come out with an authentic non-alcoholic product. He'd figured out a way, and I'm going to come out with a classic line that's going to be a beer, which he still sells to this day, which is like 1% like ours. So we're like, okay, cool. So we won't be the only ones with, the alcoholic quote unquote beer version. So that was a that was like the first big challenge. So we had to immediately get our 300 square foot room in our house a variance to be a microbrewery legally in the state of Michigan with the federal government, with the county, with the city. We ran into some roadblocks with neighbors and county officials, and we had to have a congressman, write a letter on our behalf. His name was Dingle. He's passed now. His wife is a congressman now, congresswoman, but he was very nice, helped us. So we had a variance. We had to have like a padlock on the door in the room and some kind of security system on the windows. I don't know anybody else who's ever done that, honestly, but so
That's kind of like the marijuana industry, I think, going on probably a little bit, just complete chaos across the country. But anyway, go on.
yeah, probably. So then we had to find a distributor. We
Yeah.
couldn't self-distribute, so we got with the Sokola family at Imperial Beverage of Michigan, and they're great. Honestly, they're wonderful people. Love them. We're still with them. That was in 2010, and they took the tea on as an alcoholic beverage, and it was in these clear glass Flint 750 milliliter wine bottles with a screw cap to make it. Our concept too in the beginning was like, instead of being a self-serve, selfish American grab and go beverage, we want kombucha to be something like wine, where you take it home, you share it with your family, because we thought it was so great. So then we started distributing with Imperial in 2011. We found our first investor. They found us, and I thought it was like a spam email, but it turned out to be somebody who was actually interested, and he helped us get our branding and really propelled us. But sales weren't very good on the tea. It was too confusing. The buyers from the beer distributor didn't have relationships with the sales reps. They didn't know the non-alcoholic buyers, and everyone was confused. Do we card someone? Where do we put it? Do we put it in the beer aisle? Where do we, it was very confusing. So we were kind of still struggling in 2011. And
Human
then we had,
constructs are the most amazing things. Like how we box ourselves in as humans is one of the craziest things to watch as an entrepreneur, because as entrepreneurs, we try to unbox situations and we actually try to create new categories, not intentionally. It's just who we are by nature. And so when humans by nature box things in, it's always very interesting. But go on, because I can see the struggle going on in the human mind trying to figure out the kombucha thing, because I remember this. I just remember how complicated it was for the human mind to figure out all of this during this time. And because we had already defined things, we were still living by those definitions and still instead of just saying allowing it to be its own category and its own definition. But let's go on. So you're struggling. Do they put it on the shelf? Is it a beer? Is it a wine? Does it need to be in the refrigerator? Because I'm sure some people don't even realize that either.
yeah, and we couldn't be everywhere all at once. So yeah, lots of challenges and issues, and it is fun. It is interesting. The whole thing is just long, strange trip. It's been crazy, but interestingly at the time, we were riding this veganism movement, which compassion to animals, which is great. I think it's great, but I do eat animals, so I could see I'm a broad-minded person. My daughter's a vegan. She's strict. I mean, she got so pissed at me the other day because we had some food from a family get together, which we dropped off, and one of the dishes had some meat in it, and her boyfriend eats meat. We forgot, my wife and I just spaced. We forgot to tell her about that, and she was just like, "Is this meat? I just ate a piece of meat." She was freaking out. It wasn't funny, but Yeah, and there's also the craft beer movement that was really starting to take off, and that was another amazing movement that put the culture that also strengthened the mentality of cold chain for beverages, because because of the hops content, the high hops content of IPAs. If you pasteurize that, it does change the flavor. Nobody wanted to pasteurize. Shorts didn't want to. Bell's didn't. There's so many stories of exploding bottles with the beer, even in the early years, because it tasted fresher. It tasted better. There was a 3 month shelf life for beer, for craft beer. This stuff, I don't know if is the case with Bud and Coors and Molson. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's that short of a shelf life. So paradigms were breaking up and changing. Food Inc. came out, all these great movies about regenerative agriculture, organic farming. I wanted to also add to my mentorship for a time period. I don't really talk much anymore with them, but Mark Retzloff and Tim Redmond were mentors in the early years for our business. We haven't in a while, but Mark Retzloff was the founder of Horizon Organic Dairy. Huge in the organic movement. So we really looked up to Mark, and he did help us. He lives in Colorado too. And Tim Redmond was one of the founders of Eden Foods, which was a Michigan-based packaged canned organic, beans and tomatoes and corn, and what company that, I think they're nationally distributed. I think they're definitely in Whole Foods nationally, but so you'll see Eden Foods. So those are a couple people that live around here, or Mark would kind of go, he was from here, so he'd come back and forth, and they were helpful. They were great in the early years. But so anyway, yeah, so we had a struggle with the tea and with all the paradigms. So Rachel and I kind of had our little innovative stroke of genius, which I will take credit for with her, as I think what set our brand apart. GT's created something magnificent. Honest Tea, they created something very unique. The low sugar tea, the way it was clear in the bottle, the packaging, the taste. It's not even unique. I mean, people have been drinking tea for thousands of years, and kombucha as well. We've run
Yeah.
into many
It's the
people.
craziest thing, because it's almost kombucha and fermentation has been around longer than any of the food practices we're talking about almost. That's the craziest part that blew my mind during this period, is we're talking about something that's been around longer than most any other food. Heck, it's been around longer than some of the food we've mixed together or bred together and created. It's probably older than broccoli and cauliflower. Let's just start there, and probably most forms of modern food as we know them. So, and this is the thing that really blew my mind is this period of time is we're talking about something everyone has done in their families traditionally, that the human body has been conditioned for tens of thousands of years. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because I just read something about this, it's like 14,000 years ago or 15,000 years ago somewhere, and 1,000 years is a lot of years. So I say that knowing that I'm spending a lot of years, but somewhere around there, I believe, is when we first discovered humans started fermenting. So it's obvious that it had its benefits even with the alcohol. We just, during the modern era, have tried to categorize it into the other categories we created. So anyway, please go on. But I thought it's worth noting there that we do this weird thing where we add all these conditions and circumstances around something to make it fit in, particularly in food and beverage. Guys, even in our food trucks and our food trailers, anyone who's come up with a cool concept knows what it's like to weirdly fit in. Or if you deal with alligator, you're dealing with the FDA, but if you're dealing with the cows, you're dealing with the USDA. Some fish are FDA, some animals are USDA. We don't always know. Like a elk is an FDA animal, but why is that? I don't. So these are things just for everyone to be aware of. And I think unless you cross a state line, bison is FDA as well, but I'm not positive. But there's certain things like that, guys. It's just because we don't know how to regulate it, so we have to put it into regulatory terms. As entrepreneurs, as business people, one of the things that I think we're talking about here in the kombucha that I just want to anchor as we're moving forward is we're talking sometimes we have to be aware, one, the fellowship we have in an industry, two, what is the industry facing as a whole, and three, are we actually having to build an industry? And how do we do that? Truly, is their legacy first. And the thing about kombucha that really stuck stronghold in the food world is the legacy of it. It has been proven. There is science behind it, but I think it to get there took an industry of individuals like we're talking about. That's why this podcast is important. That's why we've had other kombucha companies on this show that have tried navigating this space, even ones that try to navigate it and create kombucha bars because they were trying to navigate the alcohol thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, go ahead. I just wanted a quick commentary there.
That's all really true. Yeah, and another shout out I wanted to shout out to Hannah Crum. And she's out in Los Angeles, and I hope she's okay. I haven't contacted her recently, but she started Kombucha Brewers International. So she's been instrumental in trying to pull together this segment and speak as one voice, to change laws and to really help everyone kind of rise the tide and rise all the ships. But as far as back to my personal journey with Rachel, so yeah, we had our little innovation stroke of good genius, luck, whatever, fortuitousness with, it's really not that great a leap of thinking, but in the summer of 2011, where we came up with the concept of hard kombucha. And we didn't know anybody else who had done that. We knew of a few blends with beer, but everybody was just making tea. And some of it was more, alcohol-y than others, but, I'd say nowhere more than 2 or 3% just naturally occurring. And an interesting thing about kombucha, just to educate everyone real quick, is it's a fascinating culture. We're talking fermented foods. There's a lacto culture like kvass or sauerkraut or pickled beets or pickled turnips. As a Middle Eastern guy, I love pickled turnips. And then there's acetic cultures like vinegar, a vinegar mother, apple cider vinegar, grape vinegar, you name it, rice. It's all kind of the same culture. Kombucha is its own. It's thoroughly unique. It replicates itself over and over and over and infinite times, it seems, and it stays pretty consistent. I mean, our cultures have shifted a little bit over the years, but ours are a bit more yeasty. So because of the yeast we add to our brews, but it's got acetic acid and acetobacter. It's got lactobacillus. It's got Saccharomyces, which is the standard yeast that makes beer, and even bread. It's got Brettanomyces, another yeast that makes really good beers, like Belgian lambics have Brett, which has a bit of a funky smell when you open it, and like they call it horse blanket. It's different smells that are a bit more musky, but over time when you age it in a bottle, they develop into really complex, tropical fruits, flavors that are incredible. So you've got a hodgepodge of microorganisms all working together, and many, many more. Gluconobacter, which is several unique, powerful ones just to kombucha, and they keep going. And if you ferment kombucha in a tank or in a bowl, it's got to be open air for the acetobacter to work. It will eventually. There will be some beer yeast that makes a little alcohol, but the acetobacter eats alcohol. So eventually the acetobacter will eat all the alcohol. There will be zero left, and it'll just be really good vinegar. And that's been a business idea we've thrown around. We have some aged vinegar. It's kombucha vinegar. It's the best. I use it for everything. I love it. But anyway, that's a bit about alcohol levels. So we decided to make hard kombucha. And as far as I know, we're the first to do that. So we're proud of that. We're the first to market it for sure. We made Imperial Beverage very happy because we came to them with just 2 flavors: ginger, because we figured kombucha drinkers love ginger, so it's like a healthy beer, and raspberry, because my wife's favorite beer was Lindemann's Framboise, which is it's a really sweet, a bit of a sugar bomb these days for me, but delicious lambic, which has got raspberries. So we put them in 22-ounce bombers. That was the package of choice in those days, in those years, for beer, for the craft beer boom. That, and obviously the 12-ounce bottles for the 6-packs and kegs. And we took them to the Detroit Beer Fest in 2011. Our distributor was thrilled. they're like, we can sell this. We know who to sell it to. So that started selling. And for us, that was our first like hockey stick growth curve with 2011, 10 through 2016, 17. And the craft beer boom was also happening. So we found distribution really easy. We ran into a lot of problems with overcarbonation. We had to change our processes, and just the cold chain issue came up quite a bit, in those years. They didn't know, because you're trying to put this living product that's better for you into liquor stores, into places where beer is sold. So there were a lot of challenges there, but we wanted to shift the paradigm of drinking, to like, I don't have to drink, liquor or pasteurized beers. I thought IPAs are great, but they're a bit heavy, or wine. It just gives you a different alternative that's living, that digests very easily, that gives you a different buzz and wears off quicker because it's helping your liver, support your liver. And just something different. I'm not a big alcohol fan. I'm not a big drinker. I'm not passionate about that. So that's always been a bit of a challenge for me to reckon with. We still have our tea. We have a kombucha spritzer line now that's non-alcoholic. That's really, really good. So we're actually pivoting in the direction back again of the non-alc now. But that was our claim to fame, was the hard kombucha. And then that spurred a small segment, but I don't know what size it is now. Last I heard 100 million, 150 million, maybe more, of hard kombucha companies. So there's a lot of them now. There's Juneshine is the biggest player, and they're out of California, and Flying Embers was one, and Sierra Nevada had one called Strange Beast, and Giant, Boochcraft, Wild Tonic. There's quite a few. Walker Brothers, a lot of brands all over the country. So now we created a craft beer subsegment, which is kind of cool, and it's growing and been shrinking the last few years. I think everybody's been retracting all beverage alcohol that I know of. Maybe bourbon, maybe liquor went up, but anyway. So that's kind of was our innovation.
Yeah, I think all in general, the beverage industry, when inflation happens, the first thing that squeezes out is usually some sort of grocery or something like that. That would be beverages, and then food, and people start doing that. So I do agree with you. I think that that's just the nature of the economy right now, I would say. And I think some of that will change, hopefully, as at least in the United States, as we see hopefully some renaissance after a dark age economically. I want to point out something to the audience also, anyone who hasn't really looked at this or whatever, and what we're talking about. It's important, and there's reasons it's done this way and was set up this way, and I'm not going to get into aquatic animals. Let's just talk about meats, poultry, and sandwiches from an FDA and USDA standpoint in the United States in the human constructs, because it blows my mind still to this day. But this is interesting. So you can be regulated by the USDA when you cross state boundaries. There's a lot of, it depends on elective, and so there's gray areas and everything I'm about to say. But I'll give you examples. The USDA regulates cattle, sheep, swine, and goats. However, the FDA monitors and regulates elk, bison, which are things that we eat here. Let's bison mainly. Okay, so it's an FDA item because it's a wild animal. Squirrel, raccoon, rabbit, possum, antelope, water buffalo, muskrat, reindeer, all things grown and eaten in the United States, by the way. But the FDA regulates it because it's not quote unquote livestock. Okay, so that's a difference there. I also want to point out poultry. It's an interesting one also. Chickens, turkeys, ducks, geese, guineas, squab, all on USDA side. However, geese, wild ducks, wild turkeys, quail, pheasant, grouse, all on the FDA side. And then here's the real one, crazy one, guys. The FDA regulates closed sandwiches, meaning there's buns on both sides, bread on both sides. It is an FDA regulated item when it goes to retail. However, if it's an open face sandwich, meaning it's only got bread on one side and the other side is open, it is now a USDA item. even though it's still technically a sandwich. So that just tells you of categorization. I wanted to anchor all of those to get you all the way through, but that's important. So what am I also saying? When we talk about industries, you can see here how USDA regulated livestock industry has so much power. And if you're trying to build a new industry and you're in the FDA, what you want to be doing, anyone who's out there, is try to be a USDA product. The categories are important. Why am I saying this? We just talked about it here. You have to figure out then, if you're not able to create a category and it's not there, or you're falling into something with someone else, you're going to have to find your own way or sort of work your way into a category like we're talking about. It's the same thing that we talk about in farming. It's the same thing we're talking about with kombucha. We're having to create a category or move towards a category that already exists to find a place to sell your product, to create your consumer. So let's talk about growth. You, Rachel, personally, your family. How has this journey been for you guys? Stress, not stress. Like, let's talk about sort of that as we sort of bring this to a closing. Let's talk about what it's been like to be an entrepreneur, the ups and downs. You've pivoted a lot. We've talked about where you are right now a little bit. We can get further into that, and we can also talk about where you want this to go. But let's sort of talk about the dynamic of being an entrepreneur for a little bit.
I mean, it's the greatest job I've ever had, and the most, by far, challenging job I've ever had. It kind of, takes you over, becomes your obsession, your world. It's been everything. Been up, it's been down, it's been, I've been written up in the Washington Post and, different press over the years. And it's been like, talking to bankruptcy attorneys and just figuring out if we're going to stay in business. So it's, you're dealing with employees, you're dealing with so many moving parts, made so many mistakes, I think having a background in business is really, really important because entrepreneurs aren't necessarily, and probably usually aren't really innately good at business. Or educated about it. So, we're like visionary idea people, big picture people that want to see something different, that think outside the box. So get yourself a good, partner early on that understands business, I would suggest. I mean, it would have been a hindrance for us, during some of the growth phases, I think, but it just would have been great to have that tempering, that kind of balance, because at the end of the day, it's a business, and it's just the way it operates, like any kind of business, from a sole proprietorship, a hot dog vendor on the way up, all the way up to having 2,000 employees or whatever. At our biggest point, maybe 20 employees, I think. So yeah, so it's been hard, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of waking up early. It's good to have capital. It's good to have money saved, or a partner who you're married to, or just that has a good salary somewhere else. That would be great. So you can kind of keep feeding the business, not having to have it feed you and itself, so it can feed itself to grow. It's like the most hungry child you can ever imagine. And then just going through this inflationary period has been the hardest time. I mean, we started in 2008 in the economic downturn and made it through COVID. 2021 was our biggest year because everyone had all that money. They were just buying all those extra fun things that they liked, focusing on their health, whatever. But this inflationary period has been very, very hard. So yeah, I'm hoping there's a silver lining, and there's, the sun coming through the clouds. I think everyone wants that for this economy, just to see things kind of start to move back up a bit. I know that preferences for non-alc are growing, so we're pivoting obviously with our spritzer line, which is no sugar, no alcohol, and then our tea line, which it's in cans, 16-ounce cans. So that's something that it still has the 1% designation, but we're going to make it non-alc in a very authentic way and add some flavors and just change the branding and kind of have that as an offering just locally, just to really compete more in our local market. We also we have a tasting room. We're pivoting to bring food in. We've never had food. It's been more of like a speakeasy off the beaten path. We've had a kombucha tasting room, by the way, since 2014. So we've been doing it a long time, and maybe adding some other beverages, just kind of thinking of it more in a business sense, keeping the brand really authentic and strong, but just giving people a bit more options so that you can draw more people in, but really focusing more locally. I think we're also, just as a brand, we're very locally focused. We source most of our fruit from Michigan farms, believe it or not. We source our sugar from Michigan. We source 80% of our raw materials from the state of Michigan, and that's either companies or farmers. So that's something that's really, really cool. We think we're very into the local farm community, artisans. The food menu we will put together we'll be sourcing everything from local growers and processors for sure. As much as we can, because that's just where that's my passion, and that helps our local economy. That helps everything, and it's fresher. Like, it's the food is more nutritious. It's grown in a better way. It's healthier. It tastes better. Maybe a bit more expensive. Maybe not. Maybe we can, if we're buying direct, you're cutting out two middlemen right there. So the farmer and us can be both very happy. So yeah, so that's about as much rambly advice as I can give right now.
Yeah, I think one of the things I want to talk about is the open-mindedness to pivot, particularly in the world that we live in, particularly in using experience. I think one of the things we're talking about here is understanding that what are you supporting? What is the bigger vision of my business? What am I actually trying to do with my business? Okay. And is the product that I have a vehicle just to get me to where I am? Or is it still the vehicle to get me to where I'm going? It doesn't mean we abandon the vehicle. It just means we have to look at times in life, we have to do this. It's not by accident. As a business, in my business, we went from doing long-term care homes, retirement homes, hospitals, into designing restaurants and doing restaurant equipment and all of those things, restaurant supplies. Like, we had to diversify during a period of time. It came with our skill set because we had to design our own kitchens and commissaries and help hospitals redesign their kitchens when they brought us in a commissary central production model. So these are the things that we're talking about. We're doing here is a pivot, but it's not necessarily from or away from our business or our vision or our core values. I just want everyone to hear what I just said. The reason businesses don't look like they did when they started is because while still holding true to their vision, they changed the thing. Now, Marriott started off as a food company, quote unquote, a hospitality company. They are now in hotels and don't have any food other than what they serve in their hotels. But they're still a hospitality company. They still live by the vision of serving people. So these are the things that we're talking about here, the vision of the business that we're still sticking towards. So when it's time to pivot or time to look in a direction and you're not sure where to go, well, what is the vision and mission of your business? Is there ability to pivot without it costing money? Is there something or a core value we're already doing well that we can expand upon? Sometimes it's a product, sometimes it's a core value. In this case, we're talking about core values. Anything else? Do you want to tell us, where can we find you online? Where can people get your product? How can they order it? Let's start there before we go into the last question.
Yeah, for sure. And we're in 12 states now. Michigan is our biggest, but we do sell well in Florida, California, and other states. You can go to our website. It's long, www.unityvibrationkombucha.com. And yeah, there's a store finder there. We do some online sales for the non-alc products a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we're looking to expand, again, as all any business is trying to do. So that's what we're doing with pivoting, and always open to other markets, as they come back online.
If the
But
audience are support you, obviously buy your products, find you on social media, all those good things I think are important. Hopes, dreams, now that you have all this stuff, I mean, everything's tied up, and you've been doing this for 15 years now almost. Is that correct?
yes, it's been a long time.
It's a long time in business. That's not a small task, no matter what. Being around more than a decade is not easy. But the 7-year mark, I think, is the hardest part. The hardest mark, I think that's where the novelty of your business runs off, and then you've really got to run it on business intelligence. But you're still around, right?
We're still around.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So
Awesome. This has been an awesome show. I think, is there anything that you feel that you want to share, anything that I said related to health, or anything that maybe we didn't cover that, even outside of your business and your brand, that you feel that is important to share, or you feel if you could tell anyone anything, it would be this? What would that look like?
yeah, I mean, I just, the journey has been incredible. I appreciate it so much. Never give up on your dreams. We need innovators. We need people who think outside the box. That's the backbone of our civilization. Our economy is small businesses. And I'd also say support your local small business. Support your local farmer. Spend your money at the bar right down the road. Spend your money, at your food hub if you have one, at your farmer's market. I would say that just priority. A lot of businesses are struggling right now with this economy. A lot of bars have gone under here in Michigan, and businesses. So the more you can support people locally in your neighborhood, the better. That's about it. And thank you for taking the time. I'm really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you coming on the show. Everyone in the audience, you know how to support everyone. Like, share, comment. Go support them on Instagram, on their social media, Facebook. Buy their product, have it ordered. Bring it to you guys. Unity Vibration Kombucha. I'll put all the links in the show notes for you guys with the episode summary and all that stuff, as well as that transcript for you guys. But one of the things I'm going to anchor as we close everything out, guys, is when the inflation and whatever it happens, we have to be wise with our money. We have to retract. Okay. But I just want everyone to understand that when we retract in our food system, it's different than retracting and canceling a subscription of a Hulu account. The reason being is the impact in an infrastructure. Now, does both affect jobs and people's livelihood? Yes. Are all of our livelihoods tied up into what happens? Yes. However, one of the things I want to emphasize is it takes a long time to build healthy food systems. It takes no time to build unhealthy food systems, okay? There's a difference between food built in a laboratory, in the mind of a scientist, and the mind of a technology person or information technology person that looks at solutions and problems very myopically, and solutions in the food industry that is a very diverse, integrated system. So when we're making decisions, even in our businesses, in the way that we purchase and the way that we market, and worrying about the dollars on our menu, the value that we're selling, these things are important. The impact that we have on our decisions is very important. Okay. And there's a lot of decisions and a lot of fads and a lot of marketing and stuff that has gone on before. Okay. And there are things out there for thousands of years, as long as humans have been eating, that we are doing again in eating, even with the Industrial Revolution, which should make us easier to complement nature, not try to correct it. Because that's what we're doing. We're trying to correct something that's been around and matured and in its ways for tens of thousands of years. Do we as Americans come up with great solutions for things? Yes. But there's one thing that we do better than when we create something from scratch. It's when we enhance it. What's been given, a tree into furniture, a tree into a house. So what am I talking about? Look at the quality of the things that we buy. Look at the diversity of what we're drinking, what we're eating, what we're buying. Where is it coming from? Why is that important? It matters, guys. There's nothing more impactful and nothing more than our dollars and our cents trickle through rapidly than a food system. In our businesses, we have more impact and influence not only on the humans that we touch more than any other industry, but also in the impact we have on our planet, our environment, and the health of the animals, the plants, and the humans on it. So while we get stuck in categories, which we just talked about here, of things like vegan or pescatarian or Whole30 or paleo, are we really talking about the same thing, and do we all really have the same vision? And if it's truly life and trying to preserve life for everyone, what does that truly look like for the world? And what is the purpose of the things around us? Because should we leave the trees alone? Potentially, but then we don't have houses. There's things that have purpose for us in their domain, and there's things we need to understand that if we don't give them purpose, there is no purpose for them. And if we don't give them purpose, they will never give their purpose to the beauty of the world and the future of their world. That includes us. It's a question. I don't have all the answers, but being in the diverse food system that I was in healthcare and diets and sourcing and menus in that way, it gives you perspective of how integrated things are and how when we're only in cows or only in beef or we're only in our certain field, that we could think very myopically and very competitively and try to hurt other industries or animals that compete with us, or if plants versus animals or whatever we're in. I encourage everyone to look at the whole. And if we can all find a way to go towards a whole together, because we all have the same vision, we all have the same thing inside driving it, we're just expressing it differently. But inside, we want the same thing. And what is that? A healthier, better future, whether we admit it or not, whether we go after profit and throw those things aside. At the end of the day, I can tell you, being in healthcare and in long-term care homes and in retirement homes, at the end, no one wishes they had made more money. Everyone wishes they would have had more impact. Everyone wishes that if they have to answer to a creator, that they had a better answer for him in the decisions they make. And I will be honest, it is surprising how many people talk about eating better, talk about making better decisions for their family around health and nutrition, and spending more time in those things versus all of the monetary things we chase. They wish they would have spent more time investing in their families, a lot of the times including health and nutrition and food, especially if they're dying of something like diabetes or being overweight, and now they're looking at their family as they're dying who are generationally overweight. It hits in the end when there's nothing we can do about it. So thank you everyone for listening in. I love you guys. I'm not trying to be fear tactics. I'm just being honest. And we all know that the reason we're afraid of what I'm saying is because we know that it's true with a capital T, a universal truth that extends beyond human boundaries or the constructs we create in our minds. So thank you everyone for listening in. I love you guys. And we're out.